Hi, you guys. I'm here with two friends who have touched my heart deeply. Okay, Sarah.
Hi.
And Laura.
Hey.
And they're both going to share a little from their hearts. And Laura has lived in, how long have you lived here in Naya?
Proper, I've lived here for 3 years, but I came here 5 years ago to start Naya College.
Yeah.
So.
And she's going to share, you know, how God has really changed her life and helped her. And then Sarah, okay, you guys already know Sarah, but you don't know that you know her. And Sarah is willing to share from her heart. She's the one that I talked about, and a lot of you were really touched when I shared about all the abuse that she had gone through. And but she really would like to see the message out there, so she doesn't mind coming forward. So we're really privileged today. So anyways, Laura, why don't you start?
Okay. I was born and raised in Alabama. I moved here when I was 18 to start Naya College in 2009. I guess to start from the beginning, I grew up in like a Christian household where like God was a very real presence, but like we didn't often go to church. The lifestyle wasn't very congruent to what like Jesus had in mind or what God had in mind, and so like we would just kind of go in and out of church, and eventually my dad stopped going, but my mom and I found a Vineyard church. And we loved it. It was really cool. Like the presence of God was like really strong and very true. And I remember when I was 10 years old, the pastor led us in the salvation prayer, and I remember accepting Jesus into my heart at that moment. And I remember feeling a change, but there wasn't a change in my life, and there was still a lot of junk that I had to deal with as far as family and school and everything. And so that happened when I was 10 years old. And when I was 12, I made a really stupid decision. And like, you know, looking back on it, it's like I was 12, you know, I don't beat myself up over it so much. And I would share, but there was somebody else involved. And so like, I can't really say like what exactly it was. Sorry for the lack of information. But it really convinced me in that moment that like I like wasn't worthy of God's love. And I really thought that because I made this decision that like I was dirty and I wasn't okay, and it just, it was terrible. I was completely filled with shame and guilt. And for 4 years, and like, you know, anybody who's gone through their teenage years knows that 4 years as a teenager feels like a lifetime. And so, like, for 4 years, I was just in a shame spiral of just, like, I hated myself. I was convinced that every single person around me hated me, including my family members, but no one knew what happened. And so I carried this junk with me, rather than like letting God handle it. Also because I didn't really believe that God loved me either, so I didn't want him to have it. And so when I was 16, I was a junior in high school, and I had befriended this girl named Christina that I went to high school with, and she told me every Wednesday night for like 3 or 4 months, like, Laura, you know, like we rode the same bus, and she was like, Laura, come to youth group tonight, you know, like every Wednesday night. And it bothered me to no end. Like, she just would not leave me alone. And so I finally just gave in and was like, shut up, like, okay, I'll go with you. And it was the same message of like, I was convinced that like all the kids in the youth group would hate me and would judge me, and like, you know, I'm different. And that like one Wednesday night we spent an awkward afternoon in her house, like eating dinner, and we finally like made it to youth group that night. And I remember sitting on the couch and sitting with another new kid that was there, and we just sat there talking, and I remember very distinctly feeling accepted.
Wow.
And I don't think I'd ever felt it until that point. And everybody was very welcoming. It was a very small youth group, very small church. But everybody was very chill. And everybody, like,
Chill.
they wanted me to be there. And I had no idea what that felt like. So I kept going. And it was just kind of like this reawakening of realizing that, like, I'm a human being and these are human beings. And, like, we are all worthy of love.
Yes.
And so the school year went on, and that was in April when I first started going to youth group. And then June rolls around after school's over. Alabama's school time is different. Like, it ends in like May or early May rather than June. I don't know how it is up here. Anyways, June rolls around and summer camp comes up, and everybody's telling me, like, Laura, you gotta go to summer camp. It's gonna be so much fun. And it was the same thing that kept running through my mind. Like, no, they're gonna judge me. I'm gonna look different. Like, no one's gonna accept me. And I remember a friend of mine was just like, Laura, just go. And I don't know why that finally convinced me, but it did. And so I ended up going to youth group to summer camp. And there was this moment. I'm gonna backtrack real fast. So as most of the world knows, there's a song called Amazing Grace, and it's a beautiful, amazing song. But for my entire life, I hated that song. And I was convinced that it was because the melody's boring, everybody sings it, it doesn't end, and blah, blah, blah. And so I got to summer camp that year, and they played that song. And I remember the first night, I just kind of tuned it out, and I didn't pay attention. I was like, whatever. And then I remember a few nights later, they played it again, but it wasn't the original version. It was the Chris Tomlin version that has the new lyrics, my chains are gone, I've been set free. And I'd never heard that version before. And I finally paid attention a couple nights into summer camp. And when I heard that, I felt like a blow to my chest. I felt like I got kicked, and I doubled over. And
But in a good way?
In a good way. It didn't hurt. It just, like, it was like such force that I couldn't stand up anymore. And I doubled over. I was on my knees just weeping, and I didn't really know why. I'm gonna start crying. I didn't really know why. And then I heard God say to me, Laura, I love you, and I've forgiven you.
Wow.
And I tell this story, I've told this story so many times over the years, and I still cry every time. And from that moment on, like, I realized why I hated the song Amazing Grace was because I was convinced that it wasn't true for me. Like, I was convinced that grace did not belong to me, and I wasn't worthy of it. But when he told me, I love you and I forgive you, I finally realized that, like, I'm his daughter.
Wow.
And he created me, and there's nothing that I could do, there's nothing you can do to ever erase his love or ever be torn away from his love. Nothing. And it has been an incredible journey since that moment when I was 16 and on the floor weeping at summer camp. But
how old are you now?
I'm 23 now. It's been a good 7 years. Since then, I've been rediscovering almost daily just God's love for me and for his people, and just the beauty that he has in us and in the world for us. And it's been unbelievable, and I love sharing it with people. It's the greatest joy.
Thank you so much for sharing, Laura. And I think that we're going to do this in 2 parts.
Okay.
And so right now, my glasses are broken.
Laura.
Thank you, Laura.
Oh, that was
really touching. My glasses are broken. Oh well. Anyway, we're going to come back in the second one and dream big and go for it.